So, Popular Front for the Liberation of Fried Chicken. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this. Is one of my favourites actually, and I considered it going on the other side, but they are like different ideologies. And when I first did this work, I actually thought of what's it called, like you know the video game Grand Theft Auto. I thought of it like that, and I thought of like rival gangs. So this is a different ideology from that one. So this is Marxist internationalism. The other thing is, all this stuff is very obviously humorous parody. When Martin Scorsese makes a film about gangsters, that doesn't mean he's a gangster. When J.K. Rowling makes a film about wizards, that doesn't mean she's a wizard. But some of the silliness of there's basically anti-Deutsch tendency, which is ugly, pro-Bush, pro-Milosevic, Islamophobic, pro-apartheid regime, Israel think tank. And weirdly, they have a picture of this up on their Instagram account, and weirdly accused me of being a member of a Marxist guerrilla organisation and the Taliban at the same time, which is weird because obviously the Taliban are not Marxist guerrillas. They defeated the Soviet Union, they defeated the communist government of Afghanistan. So this is a different, it's an older generation. I guess another thing I'm looking at is the 1960s. So during the time, Che Guevara was an icon, Mao was an icon, Ho Chi Minh, Layla Khalid was an icon, and there were many pop songs written about her, such as by Julian Cope and the Teardrop Explodes. And Bobby Sands was an icon in the 70s and the 60s, when there was a bit more, I guess, utopic energy around leftist internationalism and anti-colonial activism. And obviously they didn't win their struggle in the end. Other states like Algeria became independent, the Cuban Revolution worked. It's I guess you could also see it in that frame too. This letter in here, there were multiple designs of this, and I gave him, I don't know, various sort of prototypes, but yeah, I said we need to pay more attention to the lettering, but it's so coolly done. It reminds me a bit of the Zero Books, if you know Zero Books, the publisher. They have a similar typeface and font, and I just think it was very hard to get the organisation of all the words together. And I tried to, at this stage, I kept it to these three colours, which was, this corporate red and blue, which you associate with Pepsi, also just fast food in general. And again, this, instead of scrolling the text, I had it douche, douche, so it's more slogan. But the slogan "We are hungry people" comes from a piece of graffiti I saw in a news article. I can't fully remember the source, but I think it was, I think possibly it was in Afghanistan, and I think it might have been a women's power march, like a leftist women's power march, and it was graffitied on the wall. Initially I was going to just have the Pashto, which was probably the language it was written in. I know there's other languages in Afghanistan like Tajik and blah blah blah, and initially that was just going to be on the wall, and then I decided to use it for this. I thought they work well together. The other thing it resembles, I was a big fan of the Manic Street Preachers, the socialist punk band, and one of their covers for the masses, they did a single that got to #1 called "The Masses Against the Classes," and the cover of it is a Cuban flag, similar to this one here. I generally sympathetic towards the Cuban Revolution. I know that some of the artists in there are not. Generally sympathetic towards the non-aligned movement and tricontinentalism. That said, you should never, like, I am a fictional creative author, I am a comedian, I make humour, I make parody, I make fiction. Like, my fiction is not me. And some of the stupidity of some of the nasty right-wing, far-right, racist commentary on these things has conflated what is a humorous parody around made-up chicken shops with what my beliefs might be. I was a member of the Green Party. I left it. there's actually two wider parties. I would say I'm generally socialist. I'm generally, I guess, Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders is my type of politics. Generally involved in a lot of activist groups, Stop the War Coalition, the anti-war movement. But yeah, this is fiction, guys. Like, lighten up. And I do resent the war on artistic freedom that instigated by the right-wing press in Germany, and I've never seen anything like it in my entire life. I find Germany's been the most racist, threatening place I've worked in my entire life, and I doubt whether I mean, I'm here because I do not want racists to win, and I had this conversation with Allah, but we need to have heightened security. In fact, I demanded on that in the group. So I know the Hannah Arendt group inside, they're not very sympathetic with the Cuban Revolution. I can live with that. Tanya's a very nice person, as I see, and my politics, I remember when I sat near her when we had a conference about the non-aligned movement. It's called Solidarity in I can't remember, it's Axis of Solidarity, I think, in Tate Modern, and she didn't like all the pictures of Castro and stuff. Vijay Prashad seems to have quite a romantic view of him. But then I'm like, why are you glorifying Hannah Arendt, who to me is very clearly a racist, anti-black racist? You can look up her own words. It was actually the Jerusalem Post which taught me this. Did a fantastic expose of just how racist she was. So I don't understand why you'd glorify her in any way, or why she still has such a good reputation. I think it works well, you know, the black here and but you know, I was the vulgarity of a chicken shop inside a museum, which is as classic in this. So one of the things that influenced me again was, there's a Werner Herzog film, the great German director with Kors Klinsky. It's called Fritz Geraldo, and in this film the guy wants to build a opera house within the jungle, and it's the absurdity of that. And so I had this idea, I wanted to build a chicken shop inside a big classical European museum. I think this is one of the first museums ever built, and it's sort of the vulgarity of fried chicken. It's working class, it's black and brown. Like, you can go to Happy Chicken over there, there's Bis Chicken, which is a bit more bougie, and there's falafel chicken. But Happy Chicken, which is like more like nearest thing to like a London fried chicken shop, which is 5 minutes. You know, everybody's black and brown. You won't see anti-Deutschen there. I remember we went there yesterday with African Cluster, an Indonesian friend who lives locally and studies locally, and yeah, there was a white guy. He came and just stood and stared at all of us, you know, women in hijabs, like all black and brown people, and then he just left, and that was quite common. So I wanted to bring that in here. And Maria Balshaw of Tate Modern, she said this very offensive thing. There was a diversity conference which was all white diversity conference, which is quite common with no irony, and she said, oh, she liked Isaac Julian's work in the Whitworth or something along these lines because it brought black boys with fried chicken into the gallery, which she didn't say with any irony, and she didn't understand the racial connotation. So taking inspiration from Maria Balshaw, and I know Tate visits Documenta and acquires things from Documenta, I was bring the fried chicken into the gallery space or outside it. Usually here there was a gallery, sorry, not a gallery, a cafe, and the cafe sold very, you know, organic teas, lattes, very like bougie, middle class food. Like, they would never serve fried chicken here, which is where the cafe was. And apparently there was a rumour that the cafe owner was some rave gym BDS support, and I was told this by the curator inviting me, Fred Hansen, and she said, oh, I should write some sort of explanation or something like that. And I sort of refused to, because I was like, why should, if someone has a dumb racist imagination, it's not my job to like fill that in. But I was also naive just how deep that racist imagination goes to. It's not just the far left and far right, or whatever they call these things. It's also the so-called centre. So Thilo Sarrazin, who wrote Germany Abolishes Itself, the best-selling author, has very Islamophobic views, thinks, you know, Muslims just go off the welfare state and stuff like that. And anyway, so these are the two ideologies. and we serve fried chicken in the back with on the day called the People's Chicken, and we'll serve it again on the day of Radical Chicken on the 11th September. I just love this design. I think it's beautiful. We also made it into t-shirt as well. I think it was the first t-shirt to sell out, actually, and the first cap to sell out, and I gave copies to my friend Refugee Projects. Everyone wants that cap and t-shirt. Vijay Prashad wanted it too, the Indian Marxist internationalist historian, who's one of my favorite historians, and again, but we're staying with these two. We are a hungry. I'm still considering whether to do what was an issue with the multiple languages, because I would like it to be read maybe with Spanish guerrillas in mind, or Chinese, blah blah blah, rather than these people. I mean, I deliberately chose, here you've got Arabic writing and Islamic reference. I deliberately chose not to have it in the other one. And also one of the early designs, Allah had, against my, he doesn't always listen to me, you know, he thought about maybe a Palestine tile, and then I deliberately changed that, so I don't want reference to Palestine. I want it to be red and blue. I want it to refer, I mean, it's also the American flag inverted, you know, because a lot of the fried chicken chains are called Dallas, Texas, you know, LA, all these big capital places in America, and so inverting that, something more similar to, I guess, a Cuban flag, or yeah, just that type of design. I'm very proud of both works, so and I think it really works well in space. And when you come here at night, it's something else and something more special. Allah and I, when he first came here, it was dark, and I took him on a tour, and I started there, and we went all around, and we did a fist thing like this, like that, you know, when you throw it in the air above that. And in this one we did this, which means Allah, or one God, which is the, you know, monotheism is the essence of the Islamic faith. We're both practicing Muslims. He's more practicing than me. And I wanted to work with someone. Allah is, he works with a group called Kidda, but I wanted to work with someone who was literate with Islam and literate in leftism, and we're both sort of left-wing inclined Muslims. And also Kidda Collective, which we both grew out of, where he was a graphic designer, and he designed a issue called Frontiers, which was based on speculative fiction, and he did this issue, this image of the Hajj with a moon. He's someone who prays 5 times a day, and but we're both very, I mean, we're part of a called Generation Grenfell, and Grenfell was when a block of social housing was on fire, and 71 people were burnt alive, who were predominantly black and brown Muslims. And around Grenfell, where Abbas Zahedi, who's in one of the Birds of Paradise podcast, and is also a very famous artist in Britain, and possibly more successful than me, he lived around there. He knew Khadija Say, the artist who was killed, and so me and him, we're part of that generation. I go on the Grenfell marches, and the silent marches where people like Akala and Loki, and it's pretty much, it's like Hillsborough. Hillsborough was when 96 football fans were killed and burnt, and the government, 97, sorry, and it was covered up. We're both big fans of Liverpool as well, Liverpool Football Club, and so you also have LFC, as you see here. So I'm wearing a cap here, LFC, which is from Liverpool Football Club, and I lied and I said, it's actually some of the artists, old generation artists, thought this was one of my chicken shops. So in the People's front, People's the People's Chicken panel, I said this was Lumbung fried chicken as a joke. One of the staff members, who was one of the Sobats, again asked a question I found quite loaded and racist after I did the film screen at Show Radicals, and he asked, what do you think about the action of the Popular Front of Liberation of Palestine? And I had to explain to him that this is multiple, I'm influenced by British comedy here, where you see Popular Front refers to Citizen Smith, which might be missed here, to be honest, and also things like PFC and the multiple iterations of it. such a holy PFC and other things, and like original PFC and PFC, and PFC is not a terrorist organisation. There's also a think tank in Austria called Mina Watch, which seems quite a dodgy place, and it influenced someone who ran the campaign against well, I call it the campaign against Palestinian solidarity, but essentially one weirdo with a blog who obsessively stalks anyone. He's put me on this blacklist, and he finally calls this little a lot of people take photos like this, and I get hundreds of messages from around the world, actually, from Indonesia to the US, of people taking the picture. So he weirdly said this was terrorism, this fictional made up chicken shop, which shows how stupid people are.